that we have planned for you this evening. To start with, Director Stigdon is going to make some comments, and you're going to hear a welcome message from Takkeem Morgan. And Director Stigdon she got appointed in early 2018 to Indiana Department of Child Services. She came very uniquely qualified for this position because she spent over 20 years at Riley Hospital for Children, where she worked in pediatrics and emergency with trauma, and she got to see firsthand just some of the most serious cases of kids who have experienced abuse and neglect. So we're grateful that she's been able to serve in this role and that she's willing to come and give us a few comments today. So please join me in welcoming Director Stigdon.
Good evening, everyone. I'm impressed. Susie memorized that. I was like, she got it all right. Yes. Yeah, so thank you very much for having me today. I always bring notes because it keeps me on track and prevents me from breaking down into a sermon. I did grow up going to Southern Baptist churches, and so I promise not to give you that experience tonight. Takkeem says we finish at a certain time, we're going to finish at a certain time, right? All right, so I really appreciate, Takkeem, you inviting me here just for a few moments to talk to you about, you know, one of the many ways that we're working very hard to do our best in service to Hoosier children and families. So when I came to DCS, I brought a nurse's mindset. Really, because I'm a nurse everywhere, and anyone that works with me knows that I'm asking you if you have a primary care physician, and did you get your flu shot, and are you taking care of yourself? So I am a nurse all the time, even in this position. But the nurse's mindset that I brought to DCS is one that was focused on continuous improvement and on healing the whole person, just really a holistic approach to how we do our work. And so that's what I wanted at the agency. And I often say, because I learned this at the hospital, when we know better, we must do better. So as we learn things that can be made better, we should be working really, really hard to fix that issue. So over the past almost 5 years, we have consistently attempted to do better whenever shortcomings were brought to our attention. And I always say, you know, people think of child welfare and all sorts of things come to mind. It's no surprise that there are things that we can do better. Now, after reading an article on LinkedIn yesterday, I know there was someone else here who has exhibited the same spirit of continuous improvement and striving to do better, but not for the past 5 years, but for more years than I should say in public. But since he was 7 years old, Takkeem Morgan's mother nicknamed him Mr. Fix-It Man. I love that. I think that's precious. Well, because according to the article, it's because she noticed that he would jump in and tackle anything that was broken in an attempt to make it better. And it is his attitude of making things right and of continuous improvement that brings us here today. So thank you to Takkeem for that spirit. Are you still Mr. Fix-It Man?
I am.
Okay, that's good to know, because I have a laptop in the car that I need to look at. Okay, but anyway, our goal here today is to have people working together better. Now, we have experienced silos within the agency as well as outside of it. Now, silos have an incredibly negative impact on cooperation and collaboration because they force us to think in terms of us and them. They cause us to focus inward for knowledge, resources, and solutions, and this really is a tragedy. We need to break down these silos so that we get used to looking around us and making connections that will help us choose the best means and the best resources to provide the best possible outcomes for Indiana children and families. Now, family is incredibly important, and everything from cutting-edge research to some of our own experiences to just plain old common sense tells us that family matters. Stable families and stable communities are a vital component of success in life, and having a solid foundation of love and support to grow from makes all the difference. Doing what's best for children in Indiana is our most significant and important goal, and of course, I include our children that are in foster care. It isn't easy to be in foster care. It isn't easy to have your children taken from you to live with someone else. And it surely isn't easy to be a foster parent or a foster family. If it was easy, though, to be a foster parent, everyone would be jumping in to do it. And let me assure you, I know that is not the case. We want the best possible outcomes for Hoosier families, and that means encouraging foster parents and birth parents to work together in order to reach the best possible outcomes for the children or the child in care. Involvement in the foster care system is complex, it's challenging, it's messy, but as a team, we can ease some of these struggles if we encourage foster parents and birth parents to communicate and work together. As a state agency, DCS should also help to facilitate that connection. But unfortunately, historically, we at DCS discourage foster parents from reaching out to birth parents. I recall when 5 years ago, my husband and I were looking into becoming foster parents. So we sat through the training, we were really eager, and at one point, I remember thinking that I was mistaken when I thought I heard the person teaching the class say that foster parents should buy burner phones. And I thought, I feel like I'm in an episode of Law and Order. Like, what is this? This is really bizarre. And then I had to kind of Google, what is really a burner phone to make sure I didn't misunderstand. But no, that's what they meant. I got the impression they wanted us to believe that parents are scary. Parents who are involved with the child welfare system are very scary. But as a nurse who worked in the Riley Emergency Department and in the Pediatric Intensive Care Unit, and being there when parents were told that DCS was coming, all I could do was think that they must be really scared more than they were scary. Now, my husband and I didn't continue on that journey, and it's a good thing because a mere 4 months later, I was appointed to this position. It would not have worked out. So keeping in mind what happened during that foster parent training and never forgetting the experiences I had with parents and patients in Riley, I boldly take full responsibility for the impressions we make, the work that we do, and the changes that must happen. I don't want any person going through training to hear what I did, because the impression given wasn't one of compassion, love, or understanding. So, like I said before, when we know better, we must do better. Now, one method of doing better is engaging the church as an active partner as boots on the ground in foster parent recruitment and foster family wraparound support. Now, in the almost 5 years since I've been at DCS, DCS has drastically reduced the number of children in foster care. When I came, we had almost 17,000 children in foster care. Today, we have just under 9,500. Now, over half of those children are living with family members, so grandparents, adult siblings, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. When you look closer, though, into the number of children in foster care and compare that to the number of foster homes available, we know that we actually have more homes than we need, but those are only numbers. And that's great. However, what we don't have is the stability the children deserve when they're placed in a foster home. Every time a child moves to a new place to live while in foster care, the higher chances that the child is in the system longer, and the more likely they are potentially traumatized by the complex system of people trying to help that child. So one way to improve the stability of living arrangements for children in foster care is to facilitate and help birth parents and foster parents work together during that case. After all, after the case is closed, it's possible that the birth parents would then have an extended family and support system that would prevent them from going into crisis again. One thing most of our families involved with DCS have in common is being isolated. So another way we are working to provide better stability for children in foster care is partnering with Hands of Hope and celebrating the Care Community Model. Care communities have a positive impact on our children while offering a variety of support, practical, emotional, spiritual, for the family who has opened their hearts and homes to a child and their parents in need. And I like to emphasize it's the child and their parents. Foster families stand in the gap of complex family situations. They must have a lot of empathy, a whole lot of patience, and the ability to adapt quickly. Now, by standing in the gap, this is what I picture. A foster family in the middle, with the child on one side, the child's birth parents on the other side. And the foster family holds the child while having a steady, firm, and loving grip arm in arm with the child's birth parents. As you can imagine and know, what we require of foster parents is quite a lot. It's challenging and it can be draining. What I envision, though, is a true transformation of the foster care program in Indiana. And transformation requires patience, dedication, and lots of support. And that's where Hands of Hope and our church partners across Indiana come in. We need to get past the philosophical barrier that prevents others from understanding that the state and church can work together, and we actually should. DCS is a practice model that includes our mission, vision, and values, as well as a high-level guide in how we work with each other internally, with the children and families that we serve, and with our partners and stakeholders in the child welfare system. We stand by building trust-based relationships by being genuine, showing empathy, being respectful, and professional. Hands of Hope is applying the basics of this model in their actions as they engage churches and communities across the state. They are the hands and feet of Christ, connecting church to state government by standing in the gap between the church and the children and families who need help. So tonight, I really hope that you'll take the time today to really think about and absorb everything that you hear. And I really hope you'll come away inspired. So I thank you for being here. Thank you again for having me here for a few minutes. And I hope you have a fantastic evening with this discussion. Takkeem.
Before we get an opportunity to hear from my beautiful and amazing mother, I want to take a few minutes to share some personal stories from my own life, stories that really have inspired me and motivated me to stay in the service of the foster care community and families that are impacted by the child welfare system. And I also want to share an exciting project that I've been working on for the last year. But before I do that, this wouldn't be an event without a video presentation. So I'm going to have a video presentation, and then I'll share some of the experiences that I've had that have motivated me. Can we share the video?
My name is Takkeem Morgan, and I was born and raised in North Philadelphia. Like most families in my community, my family struggled to make ends meet, and my parents struggled with the everyday ills that plagued our environment, such as the drugs, poverty, the lack of access to quality education, and the cycles of neglect. I attended M. Hall Stanton Elementary School just a few blocks away from my house, and when I was 9 years old in the 4th grade, HBO did a documentary on my school. The film documents the conditions and illustrates the plight that my family and our community faced at the time. But 1 year after the film was made, my life took a dramatic turn for the worse. The state of Pennsylvania designated my mother unfit and removed my siblings and I from our home. The following year, after a downward spiral of depression, my mother would be incarcerated with a sentence of 5 to 15 years. And that was just the beginning of my 8-year journey through the foster care system. I gotta admit, those were some of the toughest years of my life. But with the help of a few very special adults who opened up not only their homes, but also their hearts to me and my family, I was able to make it through those challenging times. That's why today I'm so passionate about the opportunity that I have to advocate on behalf of increased support for foster parents. 2 years ago, Foster America gave me the opportunity to turn my lived experience into leadership. And today we are working together to transform the child welfare system. As a new member of the Foster America movement to improve the lives of our most vulnerable children and families, I am eager to do my part to bring about the change and the innovation that the next generation of foster children so desperately deserve. I look forward to connecting with many of you and to working with you to bring about these changes. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for the next generation of vulnerable children. Thank you for listening to my story, and I look forward to working with you.
When I was just 7 years old, as Director Stigdon said, my mom gave me the nickname Mr. Fix-It Man. You remember that, right? She gave me the nickname Mr. Fix-It Man. And the reason, well, put it this way, she bought me this tool belt to officiate the title of Mr. Fix-It Man.
And I wore this tool belt every day. Did I wear it everywhere? I wore it every day, and I was extremely proud of it. And I was always looking for an opportunity to use the tools. And I was 7 years old, as I said, at the time. So, you know, I had 7-year-old tools. Nonetheless, the reason why she gave me the nickname Mr. Fix-It Man is because she noticed that whenever I would see something broken around the house, our little North Philadelphia house, right? You know, I'd be eager to try to fix it. I mean, it didn't matter what it was. I was just excited to try to help out. And so my mom gave me that name. But one day, I was downstairs watching TV, and my mom was upstairs in her room. And we had one of those old TVs, those tube TVs, nothing new like we have today, no flat screens, nothing like that. And the TV was giving off this static, you know, couldn't see the cartoons I was watching. And when I saw the static, I was like, where's my tool belt? So I go and get my 7-year-old tool belt, and I'm about to fix this TV. So I start, you know, poking my 7-year-old tools into this TV, trying to get the static out of the TV. And to tell you the truth, was not a very good fix-it man at this time. And I was working on this TV for about 30 minutes, right? To no avail. Okay, my mom comes downstairs. She notices what's going on. She goes into the kitchen. She gets a screwdriver. She puts it in the antenna hole, and voila, the static stops. I was amazed. I was like, what? What is up with these tools? I was about to throw my tool belt away. But the static stopped. And I learned a very important lesson that day. And the lesson that I learned was, with the right tools and the right support, we can solve our problems, right? Now fast forward, about 3 years later, I would face the most devastating problem in my life. I was 10 years old. And as the video indicated, I was removed from my mother's home. Our family was torn apart. And that was a very challenging time, but I was committed to the role. I still thought about, how do we fix this? Now, me and my mom have a very open relationship. We talk about everything. There's nothing that's off limits. So we have often talked about, you know, this time period where we were separated and all the events that took place. And as I reflected on our conversation, there's a few things that stood out, but there's one thing that stood out to me the most, and that's the fact that at the time, my mom loved us to death. She loved her children. She's always loved us. And that was very clear to me. But she simply did not have the tools that she needed, nor the support that she needed in order to navigate that time period. And not only the time period, but the environment, right? The environment was a very tough environment. But the other thing that I recognize when I reflect on that time is the state of Pennsylvania, rather than connect my mother to the resources and the tools and the opportunities that she needed, they chose to label her, to shame her, and to try and punish her. And the truth of the matter is this: our entire family was worse off because of it. We went on a downward spiral as a result of that interaction. And so the experience obviously left a strong impression on me. I made it my goal that my family would never be in that type of insecure situation. So I got my education, went to Penn State, volunteered in my community, took every opportunity I could to make life better for myself, for my siblings, for my community. I attained my undergraduate degree. I ran for public office. I did all of these things because I wanted to make sure that my family would not be insecure. But I wasn't satisfied with just securing myself and my family. I was actually of the mentality that I don't want anybody else to have to go through this. And so I was a servant of the community from that point forward. Now, that commitment to pursue those tools and that education actually did pretty well for me. It allowed me to have some very unique experiences and some very unique opportunities. Here in Indiana, I've had the opportunity to support Director Stigdon in the recruitment and retention of foster parents here in the state of Indiana. I've had the opportunity to work nationally in various roles. And in those experiences, I've had the opportunity to meet foster parents and to meet birth parents and to really hear their stories. And when I spoke with them, there's one thing that really stood out to me about the stories that I would hear. I learned one lesson from my experience with my mom, which was you don't want to shame parents. But when I spoke to these parents around the state of Indiana, what I learned from them is parents more often than not, whether they're foster parents, adoptive parents, or birth parents, are struggling to continuously educate themselves and to continuously get access to the types of resources that they need in order to raise healthy, thriving children. This was a consistent theme. They're struggling. I mean, I've talked to you, Amy Jo, you've struggled to try to find the resources that you need. You've spoken to me about it, right? And so when I put the experiences of going around the state of Indiana together with the experiences of speaking with my mom, I realized that continuous education is a very strong need when it comes down to parents, particularly parents that are system involved. And so that actually inspired me to start this organization, Mosaic Foster Parents Hub. And what Mosaic Foster Parents Hub is a technology tool. This is a web platform that allows birth and foster parents to come together in a learning community. The idea here is that folks that are going through similar situations who are accessing different resources can then recommend and share those resources with each other. But I think that there's something unique about people who have been through the experience, who've had to struggle and access those resources. And I believe that we need a place to aggregate those types of resources. And attached to those resources are real people, real stories. I said, this is how I did it. So that's what we're trying to build here with Mosaic. But the truth of the matter is, the reason why I came out here and brought you guys out here today is because I can't do this alone. I did try to strengthen myself as a result of my experience, but I need the help of this community. I need the help of the community of foster parents, of birth parents who have been through this stuff. And I need you to work with me so that we can change the future for the next generation of vulnerable children. One of the things I learned in my experience is this. Children aren't always vulnerable. They may start out vulnerable, but they don't have to remain vulnerable. That can be a period of time, but only if they get access to the right tools and the right support. So with that said, I'm going to bring up our panel. Mother, actually, we're not going to bring up the whole panel yet. I'm going to just bring up my mom. We're going to do a little introduction to my mother. Mom, why don't you come on up here? You know, I just wanted to take a second and allow the people to get to know you a little bit, you know what I mean? Because I'm inspired by you. I know they'll be inspired by you as well. One of the things I wanted to ask you, Mom, is so North Philly is really an elephant in the room when it comes down to our story, right? The question is this. I know that you're a very classy woman, right? But my experience is North Philly was not classy. Right? What was it like growing up in North Philadelphia? Like how was the experience growing up in North Philadelphia?
Well, very trashy. A lot of drinking, a lot of leading children to do those things. A lot of disappointment, really. A lot of bar hopping, a lot of broken relationships, I'm like, man. A lot of like dirty clothes, like y'all had to go to school. I mean, no support at all. No support.
Yeah.
No support. So that's really what it was like. It was lonely, really.
Lonely.
But you're around a lot of people that were not supporting, but they didn't know who they were, just like I didn't know who I was.
Right.
And not caring really too much for the children. Like trying to stay outside, my thing was trying to stay high, really. Like drinking, music.
Trying to escape the situation.
Exactly.
Without the resources. And I know one of the unique things about you that I know is the age difference between you and your mom. Right? How old was your mom when she had you?
She was 14.
14 years old. And so what was that like? What was that like being raised by, someone that's just 14 years older than you?
Well, again, like I said, there was a lot of drinking, drugs. She always had company with people drinking and drugs who was upstairs, not being attended to. We didn't have a close relationship at all. I've been messed with by her name because she was high. I can remember a story was my mom was in bed. I had just had Serena.
That's my sister.
Right, my old story. And I'm sleeping, but I woke up because I felt some kind of spirit. The guy is in my room, standing at the door. My mom's boyfriend, with no clothes on. And I wake up, I'm thinking I'm dreaming. So I'm hopping up, screaming, so he disappears. But now I'm woke. So I go down the hall because I'm wondering where my mom is. I go down the hall, sneaky. He's sitting on the side of the bed, she's asleep. And first of all, when he came to my room, he had the suitcase, which was in my sister's room, my two sisters' room. So I'm concerned about them. Like, for him to get to where he was at, where I'm at, he had to go to them. So, the next morning, my mom hollering at me, arguing about something, I can't remember what it was. But I said out loud to her, you hollering at me, but you're not even aware about the boyfriend that you have here. He was in my room last night. Then she puts me out, because she didn't want to believe that.
Yeah.
So that's how life was for me. She had plenty of boyfriends, because I often said, I knew she always had somebody in the room because I was saying there was different shoes like downstairs underneath the coffee table.
Right.
So, I did what I was taught. So in return, I was living the same life, But because I'm living that life, it seems to me that my mind looked down on me. And I'm saying to myself, well, I'm only doing what I was taught. You was doing, I was doing, I always thought it was right. I didn't know any better. But yeah, so.
Crazy time.
Time is pretty messed up.
So I know that, and I grew up in North Philly too, and in order to make it out of North Philly, you basically had to fight your way out. So it's pretty much, or somebody, got to throw a parachute to you and allow you to escape. And that's part of the reason why, there's a lot of different perspectives on the child welfare system, and some people talk about abolishing the child welfare system. They're like, oh, we need to get rid of the child welfare system. My thing is, not yet, right? Because we know, and so my mom is telling this story. I don't have these types of stories. right? When I was living with my mom, I didn't go through these types of things. I wasn't, you you took very good care of me. I mean, my hair was cut every 2 weeks on the dot. I mean, that's part of the reason why I do that today. I was always, we shopping every time you got paid, right? Like it was like, so I didn't really have these experiences. That's also the reason why it was so kind of jarring when I was removed from my mom's house, because I'm like, do you know, like you should have removed her from her house actually. And it just showed me that the system doesn't really know. They're making a quick judgment, and they're not investing in the actual community to understand what the environment actually is. They're trying to make a quick judgment. And that's the unfortunate thing. That's part of the reason why we want to do this in terms of exchanging this information, because we need a woman that's been through it to educate folks that are coming up after her. I got a question for you. So you've developed yourself in an amazing way. I mean, you when I look at you and I watch the way you raise your grandchildren, the way you've done some counseling, you've done a lot of different things. I don't see North Philly, and I don't see that influence. What was the difference maker for you? Like, how did you make that conversion?
Well, really, what happened, once my children were taken away from me, I committed a crime. But I wound up being incarcerated, which was good. It was bad because of the situation, but it was good for me, because then I found out who I was, and I was able to look at the life that I was living. And I love my children so much, right? So I got close to God, and it was like, that's all I needed. That's all I needed to obey, that's what I needed. So I began to change my life. I began to wanting to do different, to be better. I didn't want my children to be who I was at all. So that's what it was, that once I became incarcerated, I wanted to, anything that I need to do to be a better person, to be a better parent for my children, and to do better. And really that's what happened. I got incarcerated.
And how old were you when you got incarcerated?
29.
Young. Super young. Well, this is a panel discussion, so we're going to invite the rest of the panel up. A little bit of introduction. Amy Jo, can you introduce yourself and tell us your experience with the foster care system?
Yeah, I'm Amy Jo. I became a licensed foster parent. My husband and I, which is not, this is Kenny. It's not Kenny. Oh. It's not my husband. So we became licensed to foster in 2017 and brought two little boys home a couple months later, and they never left. They're still with us. They were adopted in 2019. And then we have also recently, in the last few years, we fostered a 17-year-old who came at 36 weeks pregnant, and she had her baby with us and aged out of the system a little less than a year later. She's still very much a part of our family, and still trying to, guide her.
We talk about her all the time.
But through the process of our foster care journey, my family was a recipient of a care community. So Director Stigdon spoke about wraparound support of care communities earlier through Hands of Hope. And so, long story short, I became the care community director for the state of Indiana. And right now, we kind of put a hold on our foster license because we are working hard to get support for families and try to, and even biological families through primary care communities to try to preserve families and hopefully retain the foster parents that we have in our state.
Awesome. Sorry, Kenny.
No worries. My name's Terry Stigdon. My wife and I have been involved in family advocacy ministry for a number of years. We've been foster parents since, how long has it been? 2021, or late in 2020 is when we got licensed. We had one very long-term placement. We had a set of commitments for a year and a half. Right now, we're still kind of supporting them a little bit, but we have our own daughter also that's 9 months old.
Oh wow.
We were the recipients of the care community as well, and that experience for us was super helpful. Having people around you when you just kind of feel at the end of your rope, which as a foster family you do often, and having that support helps you to continue. It helps, I think, further remind you that this is a mission. It's not really about you. It's not just about the kids. It's wanting to see family. It's having other people with you along that I think is a huge impact.
What's the last thing you said? I didn't hear the last thing you said.
It was just had a huge impact having other people
Around you, right. Awesome. Yeah, I agree with that. So, as foster parents, how did it feel hearing this story from a birth parent, just kind of hearing the full journey? Have you had that experience with your children, and what was that like?
Yeah.
You Joe.
For our boys, they have the same mother and different fathers, and so we had a pretty close relationship with our oldest son's father from the beginning. And I just have thought several times this evening, thinking back to how much we wanted. How much we truly, really wanted to see him make it. And he loved and still loves his son so much. And he is such a great dad. But he grew up in the system, and his mother didn't have, the cycle has repeated for generations
Cycles.
now. And so we tried to encourage him as much as we could. So he had visits every week, a couple times a week, and we kept a notebook. Actually, we filled a few notebooks over the 2 years, and I still have those, and I can't wait for my son to read them someday. But we wrote back and forth every single visit, a page or two, sometimes 3. Sometimes we'd say, I gotta go, they're wanting to leave, and I'm not done writing yet, and I'll finish later. But we, got to know him through that process, and wanted so badly to see him be able to be reunified with his son, and he wasn't able to. We had an open adoption with him, and I just thought of, through your story and just a little that I know, how much I wish that that could have been the case for our son's mother, that we could have had that same sort of foundation of relationship that, but for various reasons we weren't able to. And I don't want to say worry, but I think a lot about what that's going to look like for them in the future. And how we might, if we will, be able to bridge that gap.
Yeah.
It's a heavy thing a heavy burden to think about.
Yeah, and it can be tough. You gotta take your time, one day at a time, right? Yeah, it's no rush. Kenny, so you're a new foster parent, right?
Yeah, somewhat. We had, it's funny because we only had one placement, but we've been foster parents for about 2 years.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't feel new, but kind of singular experience. You know, in our situation with the birth parents, I think it started out them feeling like we were the adversary, not separating us from the system or the situation.
Okay, yeah.
You know, and that's, I think there's empathy. I had empathy for that because we were hurting to them. You know, we were just the people who now have their children. And I think that was scary to them. And it took a while to kind of win them over to understand that that's not why we're in this. That we're not the people trying to take your kids away from you. That we do root for you. We want you and your children to be reunited. And it took a while to do that. Luckily, my wife can win just about anybody over. And so she found if it was up to me, I don't think that would happen because she's pretty good at that. So, over the course of really months that it took, there was some trust and some bond that came about from that, to where, you know, when they turned 2 years old, we were able to have a birthday party with their mom there, and, you know, I've got some pictures with their mom to put up around our house to make sure that they were seeing their parents and support that kind of long-term relationship, and not only with their children, but also with us, knowing that we're on their side. So it's hard to do that. It's going to take work.
Definitely. Mom, so one of the things I was impressed about with you as it related to us being in foster care is that you had you forged, first of all, really great relationships with our foster parents, and it wasn't sanctioned. It wasn't like the system was like, hey, why don't you get to meet, you know, you were kind of like sneak visiting and all that stuff, right? Like, talk about that. Like, how did you decide to navigate that, and what was your thought process?
Well, the thing was, I never forgot that I was a parent and my children were taken away. I can't even remember how I found out as to what the addresses was, but I did. Wherever they were, wherever y'all was, I had the addresses. And I would just go and visit them and sit around and engage in whatever it is they were doing with their friends, whoever it was, with the parent that was watching the children or taking care of them. And it wasn't hard. They didn't give me a hard time or anything like that. I think they kind of liked it. You know, I just never stopped doing it. You know, I don't care where they was, I was there too.
Yeah, I remember that. It was like, you know, it was almost like you already knew them. It seemed like you had already knew them or something. You know, just like super familiar. But you did tell me that with Leanya, with my sister, Leanya is my sister, that her foster parents were kind of more legalese about it, and they were kind of you know, are you supposed to be doing this? How did you navigate that? Because that was like a barrier.
Yeah, well, I did it anyway, but my foster parent was more strict. She was just an older lady as well. And I would go to visit my daughter, and she would say, "Mom, you ain't supposed to be here." Yeah, I would come anywhere, you know, maybe I would talk to her on the phone, so I would know that she's outside. And I would drive up and I would just spend a little time with her. And then I would leave. And she kept saying, "You ain't supposed to be here, just obeying the rules." But, you know, I just wanted to be where my kids was. You know, I just didn't want to forget that I'm still their mother. You know, and I know they need me. So I would do it. I would do it.
Yeah, that was amazing. That was dope. Yeah, the other thing too is that, so I aged out of the system, so I wasn't a part of the reunification process. But the truth is, right? I mean, the interesting thing about me being in foster care is I still maintained a strong relationship. We still talk all the time. You know, before you were incarcerated, and as soon as you was in the halfway house or came home, I was there all the time. Right? DRC, I was there all the time. That's right, yeah, comes up to your job, that's right. Because that's just what I do. I mean, my family is very important to me, so you know, I don't let the barriers come in between. But you came up to Penn State when, you know, first day, and that was like short, you was kind of just getting your legs up under you, right?
Look, I'm not going to justify the fact that, you know, I did wrong. You know, my children were taken away. But you weren't going to keep my children. I thank God that they had systems like that, that somebody could do that until I get myself together. You know, I attended all the meetings that we had to attend, you know, that we sat around in groups and, you know, get to know each other again. You know, I did whatever I need to do to be a parent to my children. And that's what I did. And I wouldn't stop. And I'm still the same way.
You are.
Yeah,
That's right. How important, do you guys have questions? I'm sorry, I'm like kind of dominating the question asking.
No, I was just thinking, you know, Director Stigdon said earlier about in a training how they, I can't remember what phone she called it, but.
Oh, the burner phone?
Yeah. Burner phone.
She stole that. I heard that story before.
But that was, I mean, so this is 2022 and we were just fostering a couple years ago even with our teenager, but that's still kind of the messaging behind, you know, different case managers and licensing workers that we, you know, had contact with is like, you know, you need to be careful, you know, you have to keep your family safe, and the messaging is just so twisted, I think, you know. I mean, that's why we resorted to literally writing in notebooks, because that was what was safe and acceptable. And so I know that there has been a shift, and there continues to be a shift in our department, which I'm so grateful for. I've been in meetings where we, you know, are just talking about like, well, what does that practically look like for that to change, for foster parents to be able to have birthday parties together, or have Christmas together, or have, you know, invite over for cookout on 4th of July, like, because that is what we need. I needed that. I needed to be able to send a picture of my son. My sons are black. I need to be able to send a picture of their parent to their mom or dad and be like, I need help, or can you? And I couldn't do that. So anyway, that's my thought. Like, I just, to hear that you went and you visited and you were like, you know, and most of the families were open to that is incredible. And I understand that, you know, there's things that need to be in place, but we have to have more of that to be able for both sides to be for children.
That's right. Yeah, I agree with that. Kenny, one of the things I was interested in with your story is, was there anything that, or any resource that could have made the process of engaging with your foster children's family easier? Is there anything that you can think of that you think would have maybe broken the ice a little bit more and not made it such an adversarial relationship? I can see how if the system takes my children and then you are kind of thrown into the middle of the situation, then you basically seem like you're an extension of the system on some level. Is there anything that could have been in place that would have kind of made it obvious, the separation between you and the system?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I almost wonder if that resource is for the birth parents, or, you know, to kind of help educate them. You know, I don't know if either, and this wasn't even something we ever thought about, but like, you know, us, my wife and I making some sort of video, or I think of like adoption lookbooks, you know, like so they can get to know us a little bit, something, because for the first, you know, 2 months or so, they had never seen us. They didn't know anything other than our first names. They didn't even know what town we lived in. That type of mystery, I think of my own daughter, would drive me absolutely insane.
Right, yeah.
Any information whatsoever. You know, it is important that, you know, for for folks who are going to be foster parents for them to feel comfortable and safe. I wonder if there's that middle ground to where parents can have a little bit more information to feel more comfortable with, okay, I know what's going on here. I think that once the birth parents met us and got to know us a little bit, one of the twins was hospitalized for a couple of days, and the birth parents were able to come and visit. And that we were able to bridge the gap really over those 2 or 3 days because they saw us there with their kids in the hospital, caring for them, loving them, and talking with the parents in a way. I think if they knew us and knew who we were, that might help.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was just doing a time check.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Amy Jo, do you think that if we did have say like a middle ground, as Kenny was mentioning, do you think that would encourage more people to foster, or more people to be involved in the system and be supportive of the system, or do you think it would make it more difficult?
I think that's a great question, and my opinion is it would encourage more of the right people.
Encourage more of the right people.
People that are needed, like the right kind of people to foster, if there was that, because we had to work through this ourselves, like the understanding that when you become licensed to foster, you are, like, the mission is to reunify the children with the parents or parent. And I think, historically, there's been a little lean away from that as far as foster parents getting into foster care to adopt a child.
Right.
And so I feel like if there was that middle ground and we were able to, have that solution that you were just speaking about with Penny, that would help to solidify the kind of, foster parents that are being vetted to do that, knowing that, like, from the beginning, it's not us versus them, and who's going to get the kid in the end, like, how terror, because that is what happens sometimes. So yeah, I think yes, it would help, and I think it would help us find the right kind of people to be doing this work and to help the family work towards reunification.
Absolutely. Mom, how do you feel about the foster care system in general?
Well, first of all, I do thank God that it is one, because often people do fall short, and you can use their help until you get yourself together. But I really appreciate programs, and I think that the two families should come together. You got to know who the parent is that no longer has a child, or who they are down with. I mean, that's important because they're not the enemy; they just fall short. And they need the help and the support. So to get the children back. So I think that we all should become a family as one, because now you know the child, and the parent has not stopped loving the child. But we need to be coming together to support the child.
Yeah, part of the reason that we came up with this title for this program, Extending Family, is because my close friend who's helping me develop this technology platform is from India. He's Indian, and as we were talking about problem solving, Mr. Fix-It Man trying to come up with solutions, he actually said to me, he was like, why don't they, encourage extended family? Because he was telling me in my culture, that's a common thing. In fact, we introduce neighbors to our children as uncles and aunts, even though they have no blood relation, because we're trying to put into the younger people's heads that we're all a part of extended family. And if something happens to your parents, which
In certain places, it's maybe more common that you know, illness comes about and things like that. The structure is already in place to say someone else who may not be your biological mother may have to step in and help out. That doesn't mean, you know, that you are less loved or you can't achieve, you know, as much as you would under your own parents. And we, you know, that's part of the concept that we want to promote as well, is that foster care doesn't have to be this us against them type of resource. It can be a communal resource where now you got more friends than you had before, because there's some friends like Amy Jo that are like, oh, if you're struggling, I actually have a heart to help people that may be in a struggling situation like this, not to take away your children, but to care for them, you know, for a short period of time if that's necessary, or for a long period of time if that's necessary. So that's what we're trying to encourage. I particularly believe that where we are with technology advancement, that we could really be able to do this in a way that's safe and that isn't intrusive or, you know, dangerous for any other parties, that you could facilitate this. I mean, you know, we got Facebook, we got all these things where you in everybody's business anyway, right? You know everything everybody's doing, everybody's posting it. Why can't we leverage that to care for children and to care for families that are in challenging situations? So that's my hope, is that we can leverage technology and the hearts and the minds of people like you all, and really create a different future when it comes down to vulnerable families and families in need. And one of the things I wanted to say is when I say vulnerable children, I don't only mean children that are in foster care or in the foster care system or child welfare system. I mean children that experience generational poverty, right? Children that come up in communities that have been neglected for years, right? When we talk about abuse and neglect, one of the things that kind of gets under my skin when we talk about abuse and neglect and the focus on abuse and neglect in the child welfare system is that we have whole communities that have been abused and neglected over long periods of time, right? And nobody has to be responsible for that, but we go in those communities and label and judge individuals, right, for repeating the system in a sense. And I don't think it has to be that way. You know, I think we can do this a little bit different. So, as I said, you know, I hope that we can get some of you to go on this journey with me to try to create a different future. I want to open it up for questions from the audience. I know we got some audience members. Do you have some questions that we'd like to ask our panelists? Anyone? Internet, you got any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
So what would you say, I mean, obviously, I think this idea of extending family is so great. How would you handle it if a foster parent, because I know there's situations where the biological parent is in a situation, whether it's drug addiction or whatever, where they do know there's situations where their child isn't safe yet, right? How would you kind of counsel the foster parent through those times?
Yeah, so I think in those situations, that's why we need new technologies, right? Because we need a way to be able to mediate the coming together of these families, right? In a situation like that where it's obviously a danger, I would take someone like Lolita and have her, you know, facilitate a relationship between her and this parent to prep the parent. Like, this is how you get the parent prepped. Say, well, this is your situation now, and this is dangerous, obviously. I think we all can agree that this is a dangerous situation, but it doesn't have to be permanent. It can change, and especially if you have someone that has already changed, right? And we say, let's walk you down this path, and it's not the system, right? We can do this where it's not the system. There's so many parents that have been impacted by the system and have overcome the system, right? That was a temporary time in their life. Those folks need to be engaged in the system. I think what I've observed in the work that I've done is that we create this separation.
You know, system impacted mothers don't get hired into the system to do anything. They're kept over there. But who's hired into the system? You know, one of the things that struck me is the system's a $26 billion operation. I don't know how many people knew that, but it's a $26 billion operation, right? There's a lot of resources there. So I think that, you know, we could deploy those resources differently, and we could make healthier, stronger families on both sides, foster and birth families. Because one of the reasons why I'm so motivated in this space is because the outcomes are not great, right? We're spending this money, we have this huge, complicated system, but the outcomes are not producing what we want them to. So we need to do something different. We do need to do something different. You gonna say something more?
I agree. Because also I think people need somebody that's been where they've been and to understand what they're going through. And they don't have to feel threatened. You know what I'm saying? Because all the time, like somebody, they gonna ask the question, because I know I would. Well, have you been where I've been? Do you understand what I'm going through? But if they have somebody sitting with them that does know those things, it'll make it a little easier.
Other questions? Keep them coming.
So, as far as reunification, as foster parents, should that be our first stop, reunification and not long term? And how do we as foster parents harness or find that, that will? Like, so how do we manage it? Someone came to you and said, hey, reunification is happening, right? And you'll no longer have your twins. I know you got your twins. So then,
yeah, I mean, I think that if you get to know birth parents, and you're in it with the mindset of reunification from the beginning, reunification is the best possible outcome, and you're looking forward to it. We were in a place after about a year where we were expecting reunification to happen, and it was, from my wife and I, we were praying for it, excited for it, looking forward to this family coming back together, and us getting to be, and I love the colleagues that we do, because we always tell people that, as foster parents, we want to become the main local eventually, right? That's the goal in the end. And if you get to see a family and parents love for their kids over the course of any course of time, all you want to do and all you applaud is that the family getting back together. Unfortunately, that hasn't happened yet for the twins, but I think that I'm very personally invested in feeling a deep level.
But I would say I can understand the tension though, because I felt like my mom gut, you have as parents, you have this gut feeling. There was a parent involved, or not involved, I should say, that I did feel a concern for that the care was not there. So if I thought about, then, they weren't coming to me as a
Absolutely. And I would say, to your first question, yes, I think that if you're fostering, you should come in with the mentality that reunification is the best possible outcome, unless it's a situation where it's obviously dangerous. I mean, abuse does happen, right? I mean, that's the reason I'm taking the position that I am with foster care. You know, I'm a black man in America. I do understand the attacks and the pressure that's on our community, and I do understand where they come from, right? But I do also understand that abuse does happen, and it is real when it happens. And if you're, want to keep children safe, then you don't want to put them in abusive situations, no matter what, right? Whether that's birth, foster, or whatever the situation is, you want to try to keep kids as safe as possible. But I mean, there is obviously, your biological family can sometimes, complete your identity in a way that those other experiences may not be able to, right? But at the end of the day, I think love is love, right? If you're getting that love, that you need to thrive, I think that you'll thrive, and children need that. So, all right. Well, with that, thank you so much to the panel. We have one more video, and then we're going to close out. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Hi everybody, my name is Shannon Schumacher, and I have the privilege of being the CEO of the Villages of Indiana, and I am so glad that you are here today and you are able to participate in this wonderful event. I just want to share a few thoughts with you today. We all know that family is critically important to children and to families and to our communities. We know that it is critical to have loving families to help support the emotional and mental health of our children. We also know that continuing education and building pathways to protective factors for families is super, super important if we're going to have thriving families in our communities. Now, protective factors, what are they? They are attributes that help strengthen families. And we know from research that there are 5 protective factors that help strengthen families. We know one of them is knowledge of parenting and child and youth development. Kids don't come with manuals, unfortunately. We also know that parental resilience is another factor. We know that social connection is one of the best. I don't know as a parent how I would be functioning without my team of other moms that support me and I support them. We know that another protective factor is that concrete supports, that we have concrete supports for parents. Sometimes just not being able to make ends meet is one of the biggest barriers that we see parents have. The other protective factor we know is that children have emotional and social competence in how they conduct their lives. So today you build some protective factors for yourself, and that is the social connection piece. So by sharing your stories, by asking hard questions, by connecting with others, you have built protective factors for yourself. We also know that being a part of a community is very important. We know it takes a village. I work at the Villages, and we talk about that every day with the 10,000 families and children that we serve every year. We also know that extending families, to have extended families for people when times of struggle. We know that building strength in one family, we can share with another family, and to have that woven connection with all of us. So the other part, which I think is very important given the context of what we heard today, is the importance of rebuilding and restoring family bonds when those bonds have been broken. We know that family bonds are fundamental to children and to children to thrive. And so restoring those family bonds is just so, so important. So going forward, I just hope you stay connected. I hope that you reach out if you want to become a foster parent. in the future, reach out to one of us. We would love to engage you and to have you be part of this bigger picture of making sure that every child has an opportunity to thrive in our communities. Thank you so much.
I heard a quote that said, if you want to go to some place that you've never gone before, you got to do things that you've never done before. And I think that that's the same case with the child welfare system, that if we want to take this to a place that we haven't seen it go before, we've got to do things a little differently. So I hope you join me in this journey, and I thank you for supporting us tonight. So thank you.